Thank you, first of all, very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm here to present a kind of auditor's view for this topic. This brief presentation, has two parts. The first part, I will just explain what we do as an institution, what the National Audit Office does, and I'm doing this because in different countries, the supreme audit institutions are organized in a very different manner, and they have different mandates. Corte dei Conti, for example, in Italy is this kind of court of auditor type function, whereas we have a little bit different organizational structure and also different mandate. But of course, we are all ultimately trying to perform the same job, and we are all in our respective countries supreme audit institutions. And indeed, the Finnish National Audit Office is the supreme audit institution of central government finances, and we operate in affiliation of the parliament, but we are independent. And this independence means that we decide on the planning and implementation and reporting of our own activities and audits. Of course, there is a legal structure that we have to respect, but we make our audit decisions ourselves and we report to the parliament. But what independence does not mean is that we are not accountable. Of course, precisely because we are independent, it means that we are accountable to the parliament, and we try to be as transparent and open as we can. And of course, our role and tasks are laid down in the Constitution, and we can be given new tasks only by law. And just very briefly, these are the sort of the legal structure that we have. Okay, well, our right to obtain information. So basically, you can say that the dotted line means that we have right to obtain information, and the solid line means that we have right to audit and right to obtain information. And we do not have a right to audit, for example, the Finnish Central Bank. We do not have right to audit Parliament, but pretty much everything else. There are some funds also under its responsibility of Parliament that we cannot audit, but pretty much everything else we can. So this is kind of the area that where we operate. Well, this is our new strategy, or I don't know if it's we have been operating this since the beginning of this year. It has this kind of a 3-layer or 4-layer structure. Our purpose, our priorities, what we call enablers, and then our values. So our strategy includes guidelines on how audits are targeted, what are the objectives of our work, and how we develop our operations. Our strategic purpose is to ensure sustainable management of public finance and efficient and transparent central government. And one of the objectives is to strengthen government's accountability to Parliament and public through audit and monitoring. Regarding our structure, the National Audit Office is headed by the Auditor General. Auditor General is elected in a vote in the plenary of the Parliament. The term is 6 years, and it can be renewed. In some countries, there are limits to these consecutive terms, but in our case, that is not the case. We have about 150 people, so relatively small institutions, and we have a very broad range of different fields and wide variety of educational backgrounds. So we have 3 units. The audit unit is responsible for conducting performance audits, financial audits, compliance audits, and then we have the monitoring and oversight unit, which is responsible for independent fiscal policy monitoring function and fiscal policy audits. And this unit is also responsible for overseeing political party and election campaign funding and the use what is called transparency registry. I will explain in a brief while what that means. And it's also responsible for processing complaints and reports on irregularities. So in many other countries, there are this board structure, but in our case, the Auditor General is basically who has the power. And but of course, I have also delegated some of these functions to directors. So regarding audit and oversight, so obviously we audit our state's financial management, fiscal policy, and this is a little bit overlapping what I just said. So our audit work, our financial audits examine whether the state budget and key provisions are complied with, and the final accounts provide true and fair information. Internal control has been appropriately arranged. Our compliance audits examine whether the audited entity complies with laws and other provisions, the state budget and principles of good governance. Our performance audit examine whether central government finances are managed in economic and efficient and effective manner, which is always important, but it's particularly important in times like these when the government is cutting expenditure. So it's important to make sure that the money is efficiently used. And then fiscal policy audits examine whether the true and fair view has been given of the central government financial position, among other things. Regarding our election and political party funding and lobbying work, the purpose of this oversight of election campaign and political party funding is to ensure that all those who are required to do so file the disclosures and documents required under the law. We introduced this something called transparency register or lobbying register in the beginning of this year. So any long-term and systematic lobbying or lobbying consultancy that targets Parliament or the ministries has to be disclosed to this register, and any sort of the aim of the register is to improve the transparency of decision making and of course combat inappropriate influencing and hopefully then strengthen citizens' trust in the central government and democracy. Well, then one further task that we have has to do with these reports and complaints on irregularities. So this means that any central government organization has an obligation to report to us without any delay if there are any financial irregularities detected in activities. And any private citizen can also file a complaint to us if they suspect that the law or state budget has not been followed in the financial management of a ministry or government agency or institution. So this is the one further function that we have. Well, then, if we go to this topic of the day, I think here is basically the most important slide, and I think the role of Supreme Audit institutions in general, and particularly in our case, we contribute by our audit and oversight function to creating an environment of good governance. And I think this is the sort of the key function that we have in this area, that hopefully our work creates an environment of good governance. And hopefully our audit work, and that is the target, help to strengthen the financial management system of public institutions. Our work try to make risks visible and recommend improvements in internal controls and government frameworks. One of the most important aspects of our role in anti-corruption is our role in consolidating public institutions and their integrity. We, of course, have to also lead by example, by acting ourselves in a transparent manner and by reporting our audit findings to the Parliament and making our audit reports publicly available. And in this way, we play a role in raising public awareness on fraud and corruption risks in the public sector. So I think this sort of summarizes the main role that we have in this area. So by conducting our audits, we ensure that state funds are used cost effectively according to the Parliament decisions and in compliance with laws and regulations. And again, hopefully our activities support citizens' trust in transparent decision-making and democracy. I think it's sort of honest to admit that even though we conduct our audits in a careful manner, there is a risk that fraud or corruption may not be detected by audit work. We traditionally are considered as a country with very low level of corruption. The well-known CPI index, Corruption Perception Index, compiled by Transparency International, ranks Finland every year as one of the least corrupt countries in the world. But of course, we are not free of corruption. The reason why our audit work may not reveal the fraud is that by definition, if you are committing a fraud, you are trying to hide it, actively trying to hide it. And there can be a collusion involving several people. Documents may be falsified. So this is just a good to remember. The primary responsibility for prevention and detection of fraud and corruption is with each government agency and institution. So there cannot be a situation where an individual ministry or agency says that, well, the National Audit Office will audit us anyway, so we don't really have to pay attention to these issues. Of course, the primary responsibility lies with each institution itself. And our approach towards fraud and corruption in the audit process is defined in our audit manuals that are based on international audit standards. And the auditor should always have this kind of professional skepticism in mind. They have to consider the possibility of fraud throughout the audit process and bear in mind the audit procedures effective in detecting errors may not be effective in detecting fraud. And an auditor should never rely excessively on past positive experiences of honesty and integrity. So there should be this healthy skepticism in their audit work. But it's useful to admit that there is a risk that this fraud and corruption may not be detected by audits. In Finland, as I mentioned, we are traditionally considered as a country with low level of corruption, but of course no country is free from corruption. In Finland, I would argue that the so-called street level corruption is rare. What I mean by this is that if you are stopped by the police, do not try to give him or her 50 euros to get out of the problem. That's not it doesn't work. You are in much bigger trouble if you try to do that. But of course, corrupt and unethical behavior still exists in this country as well. The corruption is, I would argue, in Finland is rather related to it can be legal but unethical behavior, sometimes also illegal behavior, but unethical behavior. It hides in the networks and structures of society, and the so-called structural corruption typically take advantage of the opportunities offered by legal structures. And structural corruption is particularly difficult to detect. These are the two just examples of risks areas that are significant in terms of central government finances. I am not making an argument that in these areas there is significant fraud and corruption, but these are just examples where there can be risks involved. Public procurement is one of the sort of traditional risk areas when it comes to corruption. Its value is very large. Significant part of central government operating expenses is used for procurement, and these risks in this area may relate, for example, conflicts of interests or dual roles. And I think procurement competence and good management of the purchase services are important here. Another area has to do with discretionary state grants, which refers to subsidy type funding. The purpose is to assist a specific activity or project, and here the sort of the grant management process should ensure effective supervision, including monitoring and compliance, and of course these related procedures should be transparent to guarantee equal treatment. Well, finally, I will just mention some our recent and ongoing audits. Anti-corruption activities in the Finnish state administration is an ongoing performance audit. Money laundering in Finland is an ongoing audit, and we've had several compliance and performance audit on public procurement, which we have done. So this is an area where we are active constantly. So that was what I had in mind. You can follow us on social media if you wish, and I thank you for your attention. And again, I hope that you have a very fruitful day, and thank you again for the invitation. I was told that I should leave time for questions, but I mean, fine. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So if online or here in the room you have some questions, welcome to present that.
From Italian Afcos.
Yes. Wait for the microphone.
From Italian Afcos. Many thanks for your very clear.
Wait. Now.
Yeah. Just a curiosity. You talk about anti-money laundering and your strictly linked with this activity in the daily work. I would like to know if it's possible for you to have access to bank account information, and on the other hand, you're linked with the FIU's network, in particular with SDRs.
Well, we don't have we have a right to obtain information from public institutions, but we don't have a right to obtain information from private financial institutions. But I think we are still. This is an ongoing audit that we are doing, and I think we are able to perform this audit in a sort of a responsible manner. So I think it's an ongoing audit. So let's see what will be the results.
Thank you. Leila Ylaoutisinen from the Ministry of Justice, and I will continue after Sami. Thank you for the presentation. you mentioned you are conducting now a performance audit for the anti-corruption activities, which I think is a very useful thing for our work. How do you see the role of National Audit Office? Would you state that it's more of this, the emphasis on the performance audit and so-called, let's say, sparring or more traditional audit work? What's the balance? And is there a strategic shift in Finland in this field? Because as far as I understood, and what has been discussed, for example, in the context of the UN Convention Against Corruption, is that actually this strategic emphasis has shifted along, let's say, the past 10, 15, or even 20 years. So how would you see that, and how do you foresee the future? Thank you.
Well, as I said, I think our biggest contribution is the prevention, in the sense that we try to create an environment and try to promote that the procedures are solid in our country, and there this kind of good governance, and that is our main role. But then, of course, I put our strategy, and there the priority of our work is that there would be this accountability to the parliament and to the public, so that whatever we do in our audit and oversight work, we can go to the ministries and we can go to the agencies and make sure that they comply with the requirements, and that they perform their tasks efficiently, and they feel that they are accountable to the parliament and to the public. And then, of course, we also try to produce relevant audit information about the topics that are significant to the central government finances. And in that sense, we try to help also to develop the procedures of different agencies, so that also in this area that they would strengthen their financial management. So I think we have there are several ways to approach this topic, but I think our biggest role, as I said, is to try to create an environment where and the financial management and internal controls and all these things are in order. And as I mentioned, that the primary responsibility for detecting and preventing fraud is in the agencies and ministries themselves. So they should have the procedure should be transparent and effective, and the culture and the attitude should be in place, so that they feel that they are themselves responsible. So they cannot kind of outsource this kind of responsible behavior to us, that the National Audit Office will then detect if there is anything sort of dubious going on, that they have to feel that they are accountable themselves.